Welcome to the SEO Insider with your host, Seth Price, founder of BluShark, taking you inside the world of legal marketing and all things digital.
Welcome, everybody. We're thrilled to have you back. We have a very special guest today, somebody who I've been looking forward to speaking to for a long time, Jeff Hughes from Sterling Law Group. Welcome, Jeff.
Well, thank you, Seth. It's great to be here.
So it sounds like, although we have not spent much time together, we've had, ironically, pretty similar journeys in a number of facets in that we've both built law firms, scaled them in outside of the PI space and the B2C space, which is unusual, and then leveraged digital marketing to make that happen.
I've been following you, Seth, and looking up to you for quite a few years. So I think you predate me by about 10 years when we started our practice, and I heard about you through a networking marketing group and been watching you ever since. So it's fun to get a chance to spend time with you here.
Well, for those who, people, I guess, who follow this podcast know my story, but tell us a little bit about yours.
Yeah, so I started Sterling Lawyers with a partner, Tony Carl, a non-lawyer. We did that 10 years ago. And at first, we focused on anything we could get because we were good at digital. So Tony is a kind of a master of digital marketing, especially in the legal space. And we just had clients coming in from everywhere, every type of practice. And then about a year and a half in, we're like, we're not very good. This kind of sucks. We need to focus because we were doing everything. So we cut our firm in half. We grew in our first 18 months. We grew to 8 lawyers. And
what type of law was coming in? What was the
family law was about half of it. Criminal was a big chunk of it. A little PI, a little estate planning, liquor licensing, whatever people wanted.
And what geographies?
We're all in Wisconsin, so 100% in Wisconsin at that time. And so that was where we started at. And about 18 months in, we met with a consultant down in Lee Rosen, actually down in Florida, and he
lovely.
Yeah, he really had a big impact on our early days. So we cut our firm in half, focus on family law, focus on 100% fixed fee. And now we're about 26 or 27 lawyers. We're in 2 states and having a great time.
That's awesome. It's funny. So Lee, I met along my journey. I went to a Lee day when he used to do those. It was $1,000. You got a day of Lee with about 6, 7, 8 people in a room. And I always joke with him. I love him. I find him inspirational. I'm glad that you followed his path. I sort of lovingly ignored much of the way he was preaching, but I found it fascinating and have stayed in touch and just find him to be an inspiration. I mean, he breaks that stuff down, and he was way ahead of the curve on virtual. He was way ahead of the curve on flat fee, and has done a lot of really cool things that. Now that he's sort of living as a nomad,
yes.
Current generation probably doesn't know him as well, but really influential guy in the B2C non-PI space.
Yeah, he's really impacted our firm. We've learned a lot from him, watching him over the years.
That's awesome. So you niche down to family, and talk to me a little bit about you retooled. You're now family, and did you, one of the things that you mentioned, which is sort of outside of the marketing world, but it's I guess it is the marketing world, but rather than you've continuously followed the Lee Rosen model of the fixed fee over the hourly?
Well, yeah, we're 100% fixed fee. So Lee introduced that to us. We liked it, and we started it right away. This is like 2016. And Seth, it took us 5 to 6 years to figure it out. And it was painful to figure it out. Selling it was hard, practicing it was harder. Everything was different. We've got it dialed in right now, so it works really well in our practice, and we really like it. It makes our attorneys really efficient, and we've got a pretty large team that supports them, so we can really handle volume, and we can handle it pretty fast. So, and clients frankly love it.
What is your ratio of family lawyers to staff?
We have 26, 27 lawyers and a total of 75 staff. So take out the 20. So about 1 lawyer for every 2 support staff. And that includes intake. That includes everything.
Understood. Yeah. So break it down. I mean, we're talking like Jay and I have the Law Firm Blueprint podcast, which is actually, we'll have to get you there at some point, because this is, to me, fascinating in the sense of how you set it up. Have you split between domestic and international?
Yeah, we have about 31 of those are international. So, I mean, so 75 minus the 25, so this is even easy math here. That brings it down to 50. 30 of those 50 are international, all in the Philippines.
Gotcha. And it's funny, I could never make the Philippines work the way I wanted to. I have a handful of the Philippines, but I paid a little bit more for Latin America. I just wasn't as smart as you guys.
We've tried Latin America and it hasn't, the opposite. It hasn't worked as well for us. So I think it has a lot to do with just the type of person you get in the very beginning that's able to work with you and grow with you. And so that we found someone right away who helped us scale from one hire up to 12 pretty quickly. She was really networked. And so it just kind of mushroomed from there. Now we go there once or twice a year and we put on events and, weekend getaways for our team. And they're really integrated into our practice.
That's tremendous. Are they in a facility or are they all in their
They're
house?
all scattered about. Yeah, 100%.
So you bring them to Manila or wherever you're.
Yeah, I mean, it's so inexpensive to get them all on an island at a resort somewhere. We're talking $40 a night for a room or in a decent place. So it's pretty cost effective.
Now, as I say, every once in a while we have a handful of rock stars. It's been harder in some of the other practice groups. And it also depends what you want and what you're willing to, what's there. As we talk about that, what percentage of staff, something I've struggled with myself. So I've created a family law practice. It's the third largest. We started with criminal and built an 8-figure criminal practice, pretty similar in 25 lawyers. And that's all a lot of flat fee. PI has started to jam, and we're for the first time ever this year going to have PI match the rest of the firm. Not beat it necessarily, but for the first time, as the rest of the firm's gotten to close to multi 8 figures, PI will do it. But family has been sort of one of those areas that I've seen you and others out there have great success with scaling, have not been bold enough to go the flat fee route. But to me, it has been sort of the sort of thing that I'm grasping for and always trying to figure out how to do it and systematize it well. One of the things that I've noticed as I've started, you don't do billable hours, so maybe it's a moot question, but leveraging the non-attorneys towards the work product. In your case, it's a flat fee. So, if anything, you would make you more profitable leveraging. Is that part of the secret of the success is that once you get rid of the billable hour, who's doing the work matters less and you can leverage the non-attorneys more heavily?
Correct. Yeah, you can. Exactly. So we take parts of every case and kind of farm it out to more specialists within the firm that'll work on that. So that works really well for us.
This is sort of things like discovery review and things like that.
Yeah, we don't do as much discovery as you might imagine, but it's more like preparing the financial disclosure statement. Cool. We have a team that just does nothing but e-filing and basically shuffles documents around and gets documents to clients and follows up with them and that sort of thing. We have onshore paralegals primarily, so we've got they're really talented, kind of a higher level. Then we have legal assistants that report up to them, and they're offshore. They're in the Philippines, and that's how they divide up the labor for these types of cases.
That's awesome. As you've gone through that pain of figuring out fixed fees, has that been, what did you learn along the way? I mean, again, I didn't feel like being it was a side hustle, so I never felt the bandwidth to be able to figure that out. But what are the lessons learned for people out there who might be interested in trying that?
Okay, so I've spent probably $75 million, but I'm learning what I'm about to share with you. Okay, the most difficult thing in fixed fee is learning how to sell it, because it's a whole different type of sale and it requires some more sophistication than selling hourly. Clients understand hourly. They'll go to the hourly attorney and it's like $5,000 for the retainer. And then when I deplete it, then you got to reimburse me and that sort of thing, or fill it back up. So with us, we're going to the client saying, "Oh, Mr. Client, you need to pay, $9,500 for the first, let's call it 5 months of your case. And then it could be X, another $9,500 plus another for a trial." So those are much bigger numbers. So helping the client understand that you get fee certainty, you get to know exactly where your money is going. You get unlimited communication. You're never worried about a bill and all that sort of stuff. That's a different type of sale. So if you can figure that out, then you could do fixed fee. Now, the second part of it, delivering on fixed fee, is changing your mindset from being a more of a let the case come to you, more of a passive approach to managing case files, to being very active. Because now we have to push the cases because the client is watching us, and we need to make sure we put all the work in we can to resolve their case in that first chunk of time, the 5 months or whatever our fee agreement calls for. So it's those two things have to be done. Now that requires a total different mindset among your lawyers. So we struggled because we would go out and recruit these really amazing lawyers, name brand, great reputations in the community, and they would not do well with us, frankly. It's a low success rate for those folks. Even though they're great attorneys and they're very successful elsewhere, they just weren't in our system. Our most successful attorneys have been kind of like, for us, kind of the avatar is 38-year-old female who was a paralegal, worked her way through night law school, is hungry and after and open to learn. Like, I will hire her every day, just like on site, like resume, you're hired. That sort of it. It's been that successful for us. So that those things, it took us a while to learn and figure out. Early on, we had a trigger sort of mechanism. So whenever a case got to a certain point in the court system, then it would go to the next stage. And that did not work well, especially once COVID hit, and then everything got extended and we were working for free for months during COVID. It was absolutely miserable. So it's those two things, learning how to sell it and being really, really proactive in moving the cases along for you to be successful in fixed fee.
Does the economics change at all of or the economics of a case? This is fascinating to me. I spoke to Lee Rosen years ago. In theory, somebody could work their way through litigation using the flat fee formula, but do you see more things resolve because all of a sudden the firm's interest is getting stuff resolved? Whereas if you look at family lawyers in general, many of whom go into it like the contentious nature of that sector, that you're seeing people that are incentivized to string something out as long as there's money there versus let's get this wrapped up as quickly as possible.
Yeah, well, the cynic in me finds that to be absolutely true with hourly lawyers. That's just they're certainly not, the vast majority of them are as honest as the day is long. I totally believe that. But there are some real scoundrels in that mix, right? Who do just churn files and get people fighting, and they just relish that. So we do bump into a very small amount of that. But in our practice, we have 3 stages in every one of our divorce cases, kind of like your uncontested, contested lightly, and then you have a trial stage. Less than 4% of our cases get to the trial stage. So we resolve them way before that. And when we're aligned with our client and our interests, meaning we want the file over, we want to do as little work as possible in that first 5 months to resolve the case, as does the client. They want it resolved. So when you line up like that, it allows for you to be more creative in finding efficiencies and resolving the cases quicker. But yeah, we do bump into the occasional lawyer who just is going to churn the file, be non-responsive. That's usually the biggest part of it. Or just find ways to argue, right? Things to argue over that are really inconsequential to the actual case.
Awesome. So let's pivot for a second. We talked sort of about the sausage making. It sounds like you like I dug deep on digital to begin with. Tell me about your journey there. How did you start? How did you build this out?
So I started selling Dish Network satellite as a side hustle at my first firm. Okay, I was an affiliate marketer and ended up getting a retail license from Dish Network and left my law practice. And we were spending $500,000, $600,000 a month in all unpaid search. So when you're doing that, you get really sharp elbows. You learn how to be fine tune every little piece of it, because you get 1% better and you just made $5,000 more, right? Sort of a thinking on it. So I did that. And as Dish started to decline with the rise of streaming and Netflix and so forth, it's when I need to pivot and find something else. And I went back to my first love, so to speak, and said, I can go into that space. I can compete. I can outcompete my competition in digital. I knew that. That was real easy going into that. So that was the thesis for starting the firm. So we put it all together. And I don't know if I've ever told you this, Seth, but I actually heard from Perry Marshall your name, and I reached out to you. You didn't know me. This is 10, 11 years ago. And we had a 30 or 40 minute conversation, and because you were growing, you're one of the few attorneys 11 years ago growing your firm through digital primarily. And I'm like, we're going to copy that. And he gave me your name. I reached out. You responded and gave me some good pointers. But we were 100% focused on digital, always have been, and it's still our main bread and butter today. So digital is what we built the firm on.
Well, so just so funny. A couple things. One, didn't know Perry Marshall knew who I was, so that's kind of a cool compliment. And secondly, when you hear a story like that, you never know if somebody didn't take the time to speak to you versus you connect. So I'm glad that I did right by you.
You did. You did.
That's awesome. So for you, so for me, my journey was when I started. It was possibly a decade before this. I ended up with a bunch of what today would be called microsites. I didn't know what a microsite was because me and my geeking out team, we would build each one as if they were their own site and really built, a presence. And DC, Maryland, Virginia sort of connected. But my feeling was people will resonate the best with somebody who's close to them that can solve their problem. So I ended up with this whole family, still have a whole family of websites, depending if something is DC, Maryland, Virginia. Over time, that's been consolidated, but a separate presence for criminal versus family versus personal injury. The idea being that if you want a divorce, you don't really care that they do everything else. There's some people that want a power regional firm. That's likely not the person coming for a flat fee. The person coming there is like, do you do divorce law and will you solve my problem? That was my thesis, and built out all of these websites. Even pre-Google My Business, which has become more and more important. We'll talk about that in a minute. But, so I was, in one sense, people that come to me today, the idea of one website for multiple geographies and one website for multiple practice areas is not so far. And that's probably a best practice by Google standards, having just the happenstance to have started this at a point when the top line URL meant so much. That I ended up with this whole smorgasbord of sites. So when you launched 10 years ago or so, how did you view this? For me, I actually, when stuff was easy enough outside of PI, stuff was non-competitive enough that I could compete against myself, and that was another reason for these microsites, because I might end up with 3 to 4 options out of the top 5 results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like you said, I was 10 years behind you. And I think it was right toward the end of that whole microsite thinking and how Google was kind of running their algorithm. And so we didn't do as much of that, but we did something a little different though. We, like I said, we were full service. And then once we went from full service down to just family, our ranking shot through the roof because now we're really focused. So that was one thing we did a year and a half into it. Another thing is my partner, Tony, and he's the guy who runs the secret sauce for this. He had a lot of PBNs. You know what PBNs are? Yep. They're basically other high-ranking websites.
So for those that don't know, this is a series of websites that you control to manipulate your own sites, which are against Google guidelines. However, they work until they don't work.
Yeah, that was years ago. I'm quite sure.
No, I'm just explaining for anybody listening.
Yeah, but they were really, really helpful. I mean, we had all kinds of them. One time we bought a site that was owned by a college. So we had an EDU website and they just let it lapse. We picked it up and it was like for their actual like bakery in their college. And we had the site for like 5 years. So those are really high value ranks. And then they realized they didn't have their site anymore because we kept it current. We kept it up to date and made it look real, like it was their actual.
You just had a couple links to your stuff on.
Yeah, like 1 or 2 links on there because we put their updated pricing. We put it all on there because we wanted it to stay, and they never noticed it. Like they didn't pay attention to who was doing on their site. So we did a lot of that. But where we really took off,
I love it. That's tremendous. We're keeping up with the price, probably better than they were.
Yeah, we were. I don't know what they thought, but we finally got an email from them and say, "Hey, we know you guys are running our site. Thank you, but can we have it back?" I'm like, "Sure." We didn't find.
Were you able to trade? Would you mind leaving a special thank you page for the history of what we've done?
I don't know what we did. I can't remember that far back, but it was pretty funny when that happened. One of the things we did, it was kind of like it was brand new back then, was really understanding the power of the map listings. And so about a year and a half in, we started adding other offices that were legit offices. We started off originally, they were kind of like, what's that?
Regis?
The Regis stuff. We did a fair amount of that. And then Google started disfavoring that. And so we went and just started leasing our own office space, putting up all of our own signage, like everything, the whole deal. They can make it a legit office. And that was a major strategy for us. And today our map listings are 36 to 40% of our traffic comes in from our maps. So we've got
How many offices are you at this point?
In terms of locations that are map listed, we've got to be in the high 20s right now. And they're various
across Wisconsin, and what's your second market?
Wisconsin and Illinois. Yeah. So we go as far south as Naperville. If you know the Chicagoland area, that's about as far south. We go north here to Green Bay, and then west to Madison. That's kind of our scope footprint.
Awesome. So talk to us about the Google, that build out. So for me, I was started, one of the things that's funny, I was watching Tim Stanley, one of my favorite, geniuses in the space. He did a webinar the other day, and he was talking about the practitioner profile versus the firm profile. So early on, we did a lot more with practitioner profiles because you get more bites at the apple. And one of the things that happened, obviously, is it becomes sensitive when somebody leaves your firm. They're like, hey, I want my name. I'm like, well, contracts it. But as we've morphed, especially in the family space, we've moved to towards brand. Talk to me a little bit about that and the evolution of the Google Business Profile.
Yeah, we do. Most of our attorneys that have been here for any length of time have their own website, and we do. We'll map list that too, and
So you compete against yourself as well as.
Yeah. So like
some of these smaller markets, it's not. I assume it's not with your knowledge. Your brand is going to do well no matter what, right? You have a domain. Right. Presumably, if you even without the bakery, I'm sure you're still doing fine. And then you have, and then so basically you are building essentially microsites for each lawyer along the way.
Yeah, because we obviously want to pump them up too. We want to give them credibility, so that helps them, it helps us, and we'll have those they'll sit underneath our main site, because depending on and if you search their name, they'll sit above it, obviously. So we definitely utilize those, and we have run into those issues too whenever one of those attorneys leaves, how to handle that particular issue.
Well, let me ask you a question. So first, there's that issue, right? That we could talk about that another day. But what about the idea, like the sort of the Google restriction? I'm curious how you've overcome this. You have X number of offices. Do you put the practitioner profile attached to that other website at a different address or the same address?
Seth, I don't know.
Oh, okay, so the reason I bring this up, the reason the question we can kick this can down the road is that there's the Google local algorithm suppresses generally two listings at the same address, and so there's benefits to it. And it may be that it's not your primary. You have the website, so you're getting the organic reach. Without a separate address, it's unlikely both will get shown. Just curious to
I do know that we do not double serve on the same address because we will get penalized for doing that. We have found
we don't get. It's not just be clear. It's not a penalty. Only one will show.
So but
you could do that. It's just not efficient, if that makes sense.
It's not efficient. That's probably the better way to say it. And we also want the one with the most testimonials showing too, right? We want that to be the one that shows there. So I know that we haven't done that. And I know also in our map listings, we have been very fastidious because every one of those listings, the address has to be exactly the same no matter where you put it in all the directories. It needs to be verbatim. Like if there's a space or a dot or a south or south spelled out, you've got to do all of that to a high degree.
And then Jeff, as a guy who lived that for many years, the only good news is that of late, the Google, of the last period of time, the Google algorithm has been less fastidious on that. So the good news is you have it, right? So it's there. But just so you have all the issues, as AI has come in over the last 2-3 years, Google more and more knows what's there. You still don't want to confuse Google. I'm not saying you want to have stuff all over the place, but it used to be I would lose my proverbial SHIT if it was like suite versus the abbreviation for suite, avenue versus spell. And we thankfully are at a point, for good or bad. There's other, AI's brought other challenges, but the good news is that you can sleep a little bit better if it's not perfect anymore.
Okay. Well, I didn't know that. It's learning something. That's great.
So you built this out. The final leg of this sort of interesting thing that the world that you and I both live in is intake, right? So you have all these phone numbers, you have all this marketing, whether it be organic, whether it be local, et cetera. Talk to me a little bit about how do you handle the influx of these calls and the beginning of the process of taking somebody who thinks they're hiring a regular lawyer and bringing them to the point where they're about to hire the sterling flat fee firm.
Yeah, so we handle it in it's a pretty sophisticated way. So our intake to us is a highly, highly important part of the firm. Okay, so everything starts with I always the call first, right? But the intake is the first contact with the human. So on our intake team, we have a pretty deep bench, meaning we don't want to miss calls. So we kind of quote over hire for that. We have a blend of folks that live here in the US and a blend of folks that live in the Philippines. We use dozens, if not hundreds, of different phone numbers to track through call tracking metrics. CTM is the service that we use for that, tracking attribution everywhere we possibly can. Plus, we're asking the client when they're calling, how'd you hear about us, that sort of thing, and we're logging it in our CRM. We use Salesforce for our CRM.
So do we. We're one of the other crazy firms that uses Salesforce.
Yeah. There's only a few of us. I know Dave Johnson out in Colorado uses it too. But there's not many. There's another attorney in Arizona that does. So there's a couple of us that use it. So we've highly customized this over the last 10 years or 9 years or so that we've used it. And it's gotten pretty sophisticated and we've got really good visibility to our data. So the intake, their job is to obviously screen out and set the appointment. We charge for a consult, it's $250 a consult. We also have 4 non-lawyer salespeople who take about half of our total of our consults. And just as of the last probably 2 months, they've consistently outperformed our lawyers after about 2 years of, tinkering with us to get this to work. So
these are non-attorney salespeople? Yeah,
non-attorney salespeople. So they're not on the intake team though. So the intake will take them and they'll pass them they'll set the appointment with the client.
Are you doing paid consultations, free consultations?
Paid
consultations.
It's $100 for the non-lawyer. We call them CLAs, consult legal assistant. So it'll be $100 for them or $250 to meet with a lawyer. And I don't know if they give the clients an option as much as it's just like, where do you want to, it's more of a scheduling issue. Like when do you want to be scheduled? And then that determines who they meet with. That's probably a big part of it. So that's our intake team. We've got, 12 or 13 people on our intake team total.
Awesome. Very, very cool. So, basically, so you're doing those calls. Talk to me. This is something that we've been, we're later to the game. In the PI side, it's easy to use paralegals versus lawyers. We follow state laws as far as when a lawyer is required or not. On the fee for service side, it's much more challenging. And we are sort of, there are training groups, there are affinity groups that push the non-attorney salesperson very hard. Yeah. And to me, it has never been, it is, I see firms that do it very well. I also see those firms devastated because it's so hard to train that if that person leaves, it becomes a risk factor for the firm almost, in a smaller situation. Yeah. What is your process? It sounds like once you get it and you sort of say, hey, it's sales. And it's great when it's a JD, but it's even better if it's somebody who can sell really, really well. What do you, how are you screening to find those people and how are you training them to make it so they're competitive?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think we've hired probably 10 CLAs and we're down to 4 right now. Now we haven't had 10 at one time, but we've had to work through them. So the training is a very long training process. This isn't a 3-week deal. It takes a long time to learn the nuances because you can't give advice, but you got to give hope, right? Enough hope and belief that the client will actually fund. So that's really difficult on the training side of it. And the way we found the most success in hiring them was looking nationally in the US here. We search nationally. We search in smaller markets. We offer a really good compensation package and the work from home options with a whole lot of requirements around what your background and your internet and all that's going to look like and feel like, how you present on camera. We do an initial screening with them. Then we make them do like a full video of themselves.
These are non-lawyers you're talking about.
These are the non-lawyers. Yeah, the non-lawyer salespeople.
But what are you finding? Are you getting guys who are salespeople or are you finding
like you're looking for hardcore salespeople that just love sales. That's what
Which is also tough. I've seen this from the BluShark side because I have a sales team there and we've recruited a lot for it. I'm very blessed. I think we have an amazing business development group, which is not cutthroat towards each other. These are people that help each other work collaboratively. But in the sales world, that's few and far between. That generally the culture that works within a sales team may not comport with the culture you've created within the law firm. Wondered if you've seen that as you've tried to build that out.
What we've done is we've assigned a CLA to each of our main offices. And so they sit in with the lawyers in all of the lawyers' meetings, and they're incentivized for the overall success of their particular branch. So there's a lot of collaboration between the legal team and the CLAs. We don't have any competition between the CLAs.
No, it's the same skill set that can make you amazing at sales doesn't necessarily make you warm and fuzzy in the office setting.
Yeah, well, we've had to fire people because of that, frankly.
But that's what I'm getting at.
We had a high performer.
For people listening to this, people talk about it and it sounds like, oh yeah, I'll just hire a non-attorney salesperson. And the balance between somebody who gets you, make sure you're not going to get disbarred, is good at sales, is not going to piss off everybody in the office. It's a hustle.
It's tough. And if you do it, I have one caution. If you do it, you got to be prepared to fire your top performer over and over, because that will happen. Your top performer usually gets a prima donna attitude a lot of times, and they piss everyone off, and they start giving advice. You catch them giving advice once, and that's like, you're out of there. You can't have that. And we record all of our calls, and we audit them with AI now. You can
which program do you use for that?
Well, we use just the off-the-shelf stuff. I mean,
every day there's a new sales program, like sales tracking.
Yeah, like sentient analysis and stuff like that.
Yeah, I actually wanted to start one myself and never got around to it. Now everybody's done it. But they can look at tone. They can look at all, like if you use Otter for your own, like if Otter was following this call, it would tell us all our talking points. If we had follow-ups, it would have it. Some of these new sales AI tools are just amazing in that they can grade. I was always a person who's like poo-pooed the listening to recorded calls way before video. And Gary Falkowitz, one of my gurus in the intake space, particularly in the PI area, always got to listen to recorded calls. And it finally started to, and it was shocking because even in the old days, if you walked around the office and listened to people speaking, you only heard one side of the conversation. And I still remember the woman who was going, and at the other end of the call, somebody bawling their eyes out. They just lost their whole family. And it was that disconnect. So, obviously we want to listen to them. I mean, part of it is for us, it's having leadership within intake, within sales to listen to those recorded calls and to be grading them on a regular basis, because it's the only way you can find out, is somebody whose numbers are amazing doing things that you don't want to see done.
Yeah, we're not as sophisticated on that yet, but what we do is we do record it and then we run it through for their talk ratios. How much are they talking versus listening? That's important. And we audit them. We have not only our manager that does that, but we also have someone in the Philippines who that's their job, is just to put scores together for sales calls.
Awesome. And so I know it's a work in progress, but right now you're saying that your close rate is higher for your non-attorneys than your attorney salespeople?
Yeah, for the first time. We've been doing this for 2 years now, and we just crossed that threshold.
That's
it's
awesome.
Been really rewarding. Yeah, I mean, it's taken a long time. I mean, it's a long haul.
You haven't cracked the international nut. This is all domestic.
Yeah, all domestic. Yeah, we don't.
How do you incentivize the non-attorney salespeople?
Oh man, they get a pretty good salary, and then they get, I don't know exactly how, because it's changed so much, Seth, and I don't have that much. No, but I'm not that close to the team.
We found that
there is a success a ratio. There's something. Firm success is success for them, and it's tied to it.
But on an individual or a firm-wide level?
On a team-wide basis.
Team-wide basis. For me, one of the things about sales, as humans in general, this is true for sales or non-sales, if you incentivize something, you'll get it, whether you like it or not. And so you just got to be careful about where you incentivize. If it's signings, and they're bringing in people that don't really buy into your philosophy of fixed fees, but they know how to sign the case, or they're awful people. That mean, as a family, like in family law and real estate, they say it's the deals you don't do that make your money, not the deals you do. Exactly. I would argue, in whether it's a marketing company or whether it's a law firm, keeping those people out that are really toxic as clients, protecting your staff. And it's one of those areas that I know it's a fine balance, because in one sense, you don't want them thinking, you want them signing everything. But if they're massive red flags and they're only incentivized on one side, so if it's the revenue for a client versus getting to sign that first retainer, they may see bigger picture if incentivized properly. And it's tough because, as I mentioned, like anything you incentivize will happen. You just got to be careful what you are incentivizing.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. I agree with you. You got to align incentives, and that takes a lot of trial and error to get it right, to tweak it in right. You got to be careful for fee sharing, right? You can't.
Oh, no, not a percentage of that, obviously.
Yeah, and you got to be careful about that. But probably even at least more common than that is these CLAs are bringing in cases and they're passing them to the lawyers, and there's got to be trust there, because the lawyer doesn't want to be given a dog case or a creepy client or a really bad case that shouldn't even be filed because they don't have a case or whatever. So getting all of that right is what's taken us so long, that pass off, because the agents want to sell everything, right? The CLAs want to sell everything, but we don't want everything. And getting them to have the judgment on the call to make that decision, that takes some time to do that. And there's a fair amount of let me talk to a lawyer and make sure that we can help you sort of stuff, and follow-ups in order to get the deal done.
Let me sort of conclude here. So one of the things that have evolved a lot particularly in the PI space, is we have gone beyond just digital. I've always been a digital only. I created an agency, for God's sakes, as you have digital clients. Have you gone beyond digital when it comes to the marketing, and how has that affected the digital?
The answer to that is unfortunately no. We have just in the last month have started relaunching our content marketing, which is still digital. I get that, but it's a little different than pay-per-click and programmatic and all the stuff we've been doing. We don't do any branding in terms of billboards or anything, no paper. It's all digital. And we know that we're probably over-reliant on it, but it's been so profitable and has worked so well for us that it's just kind of like a drug.
No. And look, to be fair, outside of PI, we have not. But because of the PI part of the firm, we've now started to do much offline and it's really interesting to see those things come together. And again, it's not, you have many of your markets are not major markets where digital does everything you could possibly need, but it's just fascinating. We signed a deal on the personal injury side with the Washington Commanders, where we are the official personal injury partner of it, or for purposes of the other rest of the firm, the official law firm partner of the Commanders. And it's just the tie-ins, and again, this is a particularly expensive tie-in, but the tie-ins and starting to watch some of that come together is fascinating. I think that as you go down the food chain, and I say that with love, because thank God it's a protected space, because you wouldn't have, what you have if there was the top business lawyers in the country all fighting for Wisconsin family law. But the idea that the offline work, really, as somebody who has it, looking at it from the digital agency point of view and seeing how people make buying decisions, that it's been fascinating to see that people who were TV advertisers or billboard people, very few people sit there and then pick up the phone and call the number on the billboard or from the TV. Everything is being filtered back through the web. Some of it's direct traffic, and that's one way to attribute it, right? If there's somebody searching for your firm, different than somebody looking for a family lawyer. But it's fascinating to see that in the search results, that as we've seen Google favor brand in the search results, not as big a factor for you, but I see this where TV advertisers and PI have an advantage over non-TV advertisers, that as brand becomes more significant, it's fascinating that the top of funnel, so to speak, has affected it. So whereas a paid social campaign, digital, but not the traditional SEO PPC, while it may not generate a ton of direct response, and the direct response you get may not be the cases you want, that overall arching piece has paid dividends. again, if I'm in your shoes, I'm not sure I go there because you know what? I might just go to a third state or double down in new markets within the states I'm in. But it's just fascinating to see, the fact that much of the offline advertising is now collapsing back through digital, and that the leveraging, what used to be, we do so well with TV, we don't need to worry about digital, has now been, well, I'm going to do TV. I'm not giving that up because I love it. But if I don't have digital figured out, I'm giving up money because it's a hole in my bucket.
Yeah. That's how we've analyzed it. And I do believe that if we got into offline stuff, it would lower our overall cost, but it would take us about 2 to 3 years to get there. And so it's something we keep talking about. We've never ever executed on it.
Well, Jeff, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I can't wait to cross paths again, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yeah, thank you, Seth, and good seeing you again.
We'll see you soon. Thank you so much, everybody. Awesome.
Bye.
They'll chop this up. I may even try to get this as if I need a filler on the law firm blueprint, because this was almost more law firm than it was the marketing side.
Yeah, I listen to your law firm blueprint stuff every so often. So when you got a guest on that, like the intake guys or something like that, I've listened to all those, by the way.
Yeah, those were awesome this summer. And it's interesting. It's a very as you saw, very different for the PI focused ones and the non-PI focused ones.
Yeah.
Because intake means something different. On PI, it's one call close, whereas for the rest of us, it's one call appointment set.
Yeah.
And I guess here you have an intermediate where there's a small sale, but it's not. What's the close ratio for the consultation, Philippines versus domestic?
It's comparable when it comes.
Really?
So the close for them is setting the appointment. Our best, in fact, our number one performer is in the Philippines.
And they get the credit card.
Yeah, credit card, everything.
That's awesome. And that's what I found. But how long has that guy been with you?
She's been with us 1.5 years or so.
Oh, that's it?
But the intake people, that's a revolving door. They don't stick around that long. They burn out pretty quick, we find. So we don't have long-termers there. I think the longest one there is maybe they're 2 years or 3 years right now. Yeah.
I think I can't look. We are figuring it out, but we went international for our first line of defense, January of 21. At this point of the non-PI intake, we're about 95% Latin America on that first tranche. And, it's been fascinating, but because of that, I think we've kept longer tenure. Like with management, with good management and training, that we've started to cut down on some. Because my original model was recent college grads who would work 2 years and burn out and go to law school. But when law school fell out of favor, I just wasn't getting the quality.
Yeah, interesting. Huh.
Awesome, very cool. Catch up soon.
All right, Seth. Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in to the SEO Insider with Seth Price. Be sure to check back next week for fresh insights into building your brand's online presence. Episodes are available to stream directly on BluShark Digital's website.